I guess we'll get started, and you have roll call, or you need us? Actually, everybody probably hasn't missed, and me and names is terrible.
That's okay, I'm Laura Bell.
John Wisbicki.
Dave Williams, E.G. Barton. You know those two, and Rich Cody.
And this is Justina Sikora. She's an office assistant in our public works, and she's going to be
All right.
taking over.
Somebody told me you're, were you
I
away from
gather
when
she's
you came
not-
back or?
Permanent.
I got something.
Well, we'll see, because when we fill Karen's position,
Go back on the contractors, regional assessment, that's what it was, a Matt went on the bench.
Okay. And what about, is the guy who used to be at Rob Jacobs still there?
Mike Carey.
Mike Carey.
Yeah, Mike's there, Mike Blanchard's there.
Okay,
Something's never rolled on.
May I ask a point of privilege from all concerned? My hearing is not what it used to be. And on top of that, I seem to have forgotten my hearing aids, which aren't all that helpful anyway. So would everybody please be so kind as to speak up nice and loud?
will do. Sounds
I
fair
tend to
enough.
speak softly, but I'll try to keep my voice up.
And just say
Well-
something, Dave, if you can't hear.
One thing is generally being sufficiently loud, and the other thing is enunciating the
Yes.
consonants.
Okay, so I assume we have no citizen petitions, we have no attendees. And so we'll go on to approval of the minutes from March 8th. I have one point, which is, I think, Harry, you had said in your report that the EB outfall truncation was all completed.
Yeah.
And so I think we should add that into the March 8th minutes, because it wasn't there, and obviously we've been following that for the past year or so. So I don't know how it works to modify the minutes, but I assume we could approve them with that modification.
Yeah, what was the modification? Ian? I'm not understood.
At last meeting, Harry informed us in his report that the EV outfall truncation project had been completed.
Is that right? I thought there was a hang up.
No, it's done.
It's done.
Yeah.
All paperwork and everything. Oh, it hadn't been, the inspection hadn't been completed?
There's a dye test they have to do
Oh,
that they'll do this summer.
yeah, so that's sort of,
That's part of the permit requirements for deep.
yeah, okay. Maybe we should add that into the minutes. In other words, it was, the work was done, but the paperwork wasn't done.
Okay, so it's complete, but there's a dye test that will be done in the summer.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Anybody want to make a motion?
No, move or approve.
Okay, with that addition.
With that
All,
addition.
so Dave made the motion, a second.
I'll second.
Laura seconds. All in favor? Aye. So we're all in favor. So the minutes are approved with the addition of the EV outfall being completed, except for a dye test later in the summer. Okay, I assume we have no communications and bills.
No,
And so we're on to reports, and we don't have any consultant reports and changes to sewer use. None. And so then we're on to the attorney's report, which will be our question and answer training session.
Okay, why don't I just give, how am I doing volume wise?
Dave, can you
Dave?
hear?
Can you hear him? He asked how he's doing volume wise.
Do you want to move, Dave, do you want to move over here to my seat?
If you talk louder, it would be better.
Okay,
I,
all right, I'll just,
sorry, I hope I don't inconvenience anybody.
no worries. If I keep talking too low, just let me know.
That was good. Go ahead.
Okay.
Well, in school, what we always did.
Okay, feel free.
Yes, okay.
I'm with the town attorney's office. My name is Rich Cody. Some of you may know my background. I've done a lot of environmental law. I have what's called an LLM in environmental law that I got out west. I focused on the Clean Water Act, which is what regulates the POTWs and discharge points. And for about the past 5 or 8 years, I've been the chairman of the WPCA in Stonington, where we run 3 sewer plants over there. Yeah, we have three. It's crazy, but we have 3 plants. It would be my druthers just consolidated into one, which I hope we'll do. Greg asked me to come and answer some questions, talk generally about what appears to me from the meeting, from the email he sent me, which I guess came from somebody. Greg put it together. Was the intersection of the freedom of information laws with the way you email each other and electronically communicate. So there's 2 aspects, and real fast 5-minute primer, maybe 3-minute primer. There's 2 basic aspects of the Freedom of Information Act in Connecticut, and it's pretty much similar to the federal act. There's access to records, public records, which the public has access to within a reasonable period of time. I'm not going to go too heavily into them because most of your records are going to wind up being public records unless they involve litigation or personnel matters. The other half of the statute covers the obligation to hold meetings in the open. And the question always comes up, well, what is a meeting? What's the definition of a meeting? And then how does a meeting occur? If people are doing things electronically through email or texting and so on. So and it's kind of thorny because it's sort of new to the Freedom of Information Commission. But generally, a meeting is defined to be a gathering of a multi-member public agency, of a quorum of a multi-member public agency. So, and I know that because I litigated the case to the Supreme Court with the FOIC. They took the position that 2 members, you only needed 2 members if they were conducting business, even though it was like a 7 or 11 member board was a meeting. Because they didn't like the idea that 2 people might begin to reach agreement on a matter of public business and walk into the meeting, putting it, and be done with it without discussion. I took the position in the case that it had to be a quorum, and the Supreme Court agreed with me and said it had to be a quorum. Since then, they've been trying to roll back that 2 different ways, but the courts have not done it yet, and the legislature hasn't changed it. So if 2 of you are meeting, getting together and talking about business, it's not a meeting technically under the FOI, it's perfectly legitimate. Once 3 of you meet, because you're a 5-member board, it would be considered to be a meeting. What becomes difficult is what kind of communications become a meeting. You have to meet in person. The FOI said, no, you don't have to. It can be by telephone. And they've extended that to email communications and texting. So you have to be careful with the information you're providing to each other by way of email. And it happens. It happens naturally. Greg might want to bring you up to date and send you some information. And you begin to send back questions and answers. And you begin to have the kind of discourse among the 4 of you with Greg that looks very much like you're reaching a decision. And I know my board does it all the time. I see emails all the time. I'm kind of always cautioning them, look, we really should do this in a public meeting. How do you know when it happens? The FOI said it depends upon the facts of each case. So if you have a circumstance where you're being alerted to a violation at POTW, and you just write back, said, okay, thanks for the update. That's not going to be a meeting because you're not really conducting business. But if you were to go back and forth and say, do you think we're going to get an administrative order? how do we strategize ourselves, how to prepare for the administrative order, and you begin to talk among yourselves by email, the FOIC probably would find that meetings been conducted. So, and I've even seen, with my own board, questions like, well, I vote to do this, I vote to do that, in sort of vernacular. But, you gotta be careful with that kind of language, because the purpose of the FOI is to hold public business in the open, to allow the public access to the decision-making process, not just decisions. So, so that's the general outline primer.
It strikes me there's some issues if we are talking about email. Now we've had lots of emails to everybody. Does just saying we're going to hold a meeting, the next regular meeting, is everybody going to be there? We all say yes, I'll be, yes, I'll be, yes, I'll be. Is
That's the kind of thing that's an exception to the meeting rule, the establishment of agenda items, and who's going to be there and establishing the quorum. So you're not really conducting business in the sense of you should be able to talk among yourselves, who's going to be there, or like if the chairman says I can't be there, can somebody else run the meeting? That's perfectly.
But so you're saying that if I actually ask, what did you mean by this particular sentence in your report, and you answer, that's going to get us in trouble?
It would depend upon the facts. It's possible it might. If the report is something you're going to be voting on or eventually, like, do we accept it or not? It would probably be better to do that in the public, in the open. Keep in mind too that when you're sending emails, you're creating a record, and it may be determined to be a public record. So that your emails, so say for example, somebody were to take a file a complaint against you, claiming that your emails constitute a meeting. Those emails might be discoverable. In other words, you might have to disclose those emails to the member of the public. And it can sometimes be very embarrassing because you may be using your personal email for that purpose.
Well, emails sent by you, are those a matter of public record? To us, to the committee as a whole.
I would say they are.
Yeah, okay. Well, if we say they are, it seems to me that simplifies a lot of things. If we say they may be.
I think you should assume that communication like that is going to be a matter of public business and a public record.
Okay.
But
So
really what you have to distinguish between is whether what you're doing is simply communicating things that aren't substance versus things that are. I mean, to the extent you're getting into substance, you're holding a meeting, and that has to be announced beforehand, correct? I mean, you can't just hold a meeting without letting the public know.
It would have to be on the agenda,
Right.
generally speaking. But even matters of procedure could be considered to be substantive, like how we're going to vote on this. How do we run this? How we're going to run the public hearing?
Yeah.
You should err on the side of the idea that should be discussed in the meeting.
Yeah.
Now that's the legal answer. From a practical standpoint, who pays attention to the WPCA? I can tell you from my experience, nobody pays attention to it.
Well,
So unless something goes wrong.
Well, actually, I think at the moment, there are people paying attention to us because of this beard thing. I mean, I remember when we had an individual who was attending, and my suspicion was that she was there because the beard thing was on the agenda and she wanted to hear about it, which is perfectly legitimate. That's okay. But
well, that was the one that logged in but never said a word.
right.
Yeah.
And refused to identify where she lived.
Right. Well, she identified where she lived, but not who she was.
Right.
Or
That's
why
right,
she
sorry.
was- Yeah.
Okay, so I have a whole bunch of questions, but Laura, do you have,
No, this is very informative.
okay, sorry.
Yeah.
And John, do you have more or shall I go ahead?
I'm just wondering if we do, does it, just to err on the side of caution, if we, for instance, have questions about the agenda or whatever, does it make sense to, I mean, since it's may be a public record, to just include everybody on it so that, and I assume if we include a member of the town staff, then it's easily obtainable if we don't have a problem with being obtained, right? I mean,
Yeah,
they should be preserving all their.
Supposing we should pass a motion saying that anything addressed by you to the regular town council, to the regular sewage board, would automatically be a matter of public record. And just, so we know, whatever it is.
Comes from me, it's public record.
Yeah, I don't think we have to pass a motion.
Okay, okay.
I mean, it may be a public record, but it may not be necessarily disclosable. It could involve personnel or litigation.
Oh, now you're getting.
So if somebody asks them, they can always run it by you.
Right,
Or-
so what usually happens in representing towns is that an FOI request comes in for public records. This town gets a lot of requests for public records, a lot of the other boards did.
Yeah.
We tell them that, if it's a matter of litigation or personnel matter, send it to us first, let us look at it, and we'll redact certain things. Some correspondence is okay to disclose, some is not. So, and you have to be careful with particular matters that are in litigation and personnel matters.
So things sent by you then are not automatically matters of public record.
They're not matters of public record. Well, they may be always a matter of public information or public record. There's two questions. One, are they disclosable? Do you have to turn them over to a member of the public who's asking for it? That's a different question. Number two, does it constitute some kind of a meeting among you? So there's two aspects to it, and the lawyer breaks it down into those two parts. Does the record have to be disclosed? Does it constitute or begin to constitute the evidence of a meeting?
So litigation and personnel issues, essentially there's an allowance for a certain degree of confidentiality that means that the whole matter doesn't necessarily get disclosed when there's a FOIA request.
Right. There's actually a whole Christmas tree of exceptions for public records.
But that doesn't mean that you could discuss those issues in an email conversation, because you could still be holding a meeting, which you should be discussing at that meeting.
Yeah, and if there's subjects like personnel, acquisition, of property, you can hold an executive session.
Right, which we're potentially going to do later.
At a public meeting.
Right. Okay, so let me ask a few things. So I don't know how we put things on the agenda. I don't know if that's done by, if any of us members have something we'd like to put on the agenda, we contact you, Greg, or how that's supposed to work.
That's really a prudential matter for you. The FOI doesn't require any particular procedure for that. Oftentimes the director will sit down with the chairman and put something and say, let's put the agenda together. Sometimes the director just puts the agenda together. Sometimes the member may say, look, I'd like to see this on the agenda next time. But it all depends on how you want to run your business. The FOI doesn't require any particular protocol.
Do you have some preference?
No, I mean, if anybody wants to put something on the agenda, just shoot an email. So we usually do it before a meeting. And I have been putting them together for the last couple of years, obviously. There's some things that you guys want on there, certainly just let me know.
Okay. So I think, it's easy when things are routine and we're, like most of the meetings we've had over the last 2 years. So I'm wondering, and again, this gets to these issues of, so what you described is actually similar to how we operated for the EPA Science Advisory Board, that, a group less than the quorum, which was 50% plus one, could email each other, for instance, preparing a draft of something to bring to the meeting. That maybe gets a little questionable, I guess, from what you just said, but anyway. But like, I put together an Excel spreadsheet that I've been on for about 2 years, so it just puts up down in there all the items so that I can find when we talked about the budget, when we talked about these different items, the EV outfall, et cetera. And so, for example, I haven't shared that with anybody, and I don't know whether anybody else would find that useful, but I didn't want to share that until I knew, because again, to send it to the whole committee is historically something that I couldn't do as an SAB member. So I guess that's another of my questions, is sort of, and that gets also into, so we, Greg sent us all the ordinance that we're operating under, and so I had a bunch of questions about the ordinance. And, again, I didn't send them out to people because historically, on the SAB, we weren't supposed to email all, so.
Well, you're free to talk with Greg about questions about ordinances, individually. There's no meeting that's occurred. If you have a document that you have prepared and created and you share it with the other members, it make it a public record.
Yeah, that's my concern. Okay.
Yeah, but it would
So you're
make it a
saying we should
meeting. In
put
other
it
words,
in
if
It
writing?
wouldn't make it a meeting.
Right. So if you prepared something that you'd like to share and you don't care whether or not members of the public see it too, then you could email that to all and it wouldn't be a problem.
It might say
Just
something
for
like.
your
this is
consideration at the next
something-
meeting.
Yes, we might want to talk about this at the next meeting. Much in the way you
It's
get.
really agenda setting.
It's an agenda package.
But to clarify, if you were to bring copies of the Excel spreadsheet to our in-person meeting once a month,
They become a public record.
it does. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. We used to do that.
Yeah.
Nowadays, everybody seems to want to do everything by email.
Okay, let me find my list here, sorry. Okay, so in terms of us communicating with Greg or Harry, as individual members, we can send them emails and say whatever, and potentially like questions about the ordinance, we could just email back and forth, me with Greg or.
And for example, I have a healthy communication with my director. It's very, we talk a couple times a week, we try to talk a couple times a week, just so I'm updated, so if something comes up at the meetings, I know how to deal with it. I don't necessarily bring the other members into it unless he believes he needs to, or I need to. And then we'll decide whether we need to hold a special meeting or, emergency meeting. Emergency meetings are very rare. But generally, we just say, okay, let's talk about the next month.
Okay.
So if it's sent to everybody, we sort of assume it's likely to be brought up. In general, if I ask you or somebody a question, it's likely to be. Well, I can't personally imagine my asking you a question that I wouldn't want to be brought up. Why else would I ask it?
Right, so I guess we'll figure it out. as we
There's
go
an infinite
forward.
number of possibilities. That's the problem.
Well, there's a distinction between sending something to everyone saying, we might want to discuss this at the next meeting, and initiating a situation where you discuss it all via email, because then it becomes a meeting, but it's not a meeting if all you do is send people stuff.
Like say, for example, Greg needs to have an invoice paid, and he's not sure whether he should pay it. He sends you an email and says, I've got this invoice, I think it's overcharging a little, I think we gouged us on the hours, what do you think? That sounds like a matter of business, because you're gonna respond to them, pay it, don't pay it, it looks like a vote.
And that is,
But if he sends you a copy of the DEP letter that says this is something we need to talk about, at the next meeting, why don't you, for your reading pleasure, here's the administrative order. And that's not looking like a meeting.
Well, even if he sent us the bill, as long as he doesn't tell, what do you think? If he said, we'll discuss it at the next meeting, it just gives you a little heads up about what's going to be on the agenda.
Very useful too, if you're
Right.
short of your meetings.
Right, that's part of what I'm sort of wondering about, is knowing what's coming up on the meetings and being ready for it and so forth. Okay. So another question I had, which is just, I don't know. So when we as a authority pass the rate increase, does anybody else then approve it, or are we the final decision?
council approves it, don't they?
Now, the council approves, the council near Kim goes through the normal budget process for the expenditure side of our budget, but the revenue side is just you guys approving the user fee.
Was it always that way? I thought it used to be that we made a in fact, I remember it used to be that way. We would make a recommendation to council. It would, our statement would not be final. It would be a recommendation and council would pass it. Before your time, sir, but yes, I'm quite sure it was so.
That might have been, I don't know, but statutorily, the Water Pollution Control Authority has exclusive authority to establish its rates and connection charges and the assessment of benefits. Does not require any veto or any approval of the legislative body of the municipality.
Is this,
You're essentially a quasi-state agency, and you have separate powers.
was this changed recently?
Nope, it's been that way for a very long time.
No, in that case, we used to do it wrong. Okay.
Now, it may be that you're receiving municipal funds in the budget. In other words, the town might go out for a bond issue to do an I&I study, or, to do a sewer, a plant upgrade. Those are municipal funds where the legislative body would be involved. Your rate monies come in and you spend them as you see fit. You have to spend them on it. The town cannot spend them on anything other than sewers.
Oh, I think that was always so. Okay, whatever.
Okay. Sorry, let me just look at my notes again. Okay. I think that's all I had as questions. Does anybody else have anything?
There was one I noticed on the email that talked about how do you communicate with the town manager and the town council.
Oh, right. Thank you. Yes.
Again, that's something that's sort of just your decision. Ordinarily, you would just have the chairman of the director just communicate so that the council or the town manager isn't hearing a bunch of different ideas. And it should be, a single voice approach, and just as simple as efficiency and clarity.
Okay, and Greg clearly talks to the town manager, so there's that communication. And so if we're an independent body in terms of the rest of it, then we'll figure out on a case-by-case basis whether anybody else needs to be informed. I presume is how it would work. I'm thinking specifically about our later agenda item. Okay, anything else? Thank you. That was very helpful.
Well, anytime. I enjoyed it. Nice meeting you all.
Okay, so we'll move on to the Public Works Director's report.
Very nice weather.
It is.
Well, I did go to the budget meetings, I had 2 budget meetings last week with the council on CIP. And so on Saturday, I presented the 3 CIP projects we're looking at for the treatment plant. First is the $800,000 to replace generator A. The other one is $1 million for the Milford Cove pump station upgrade. And the third one is $200,000 for design of the Burgess Park pump station. It's a small can pump station that's to be replaced. They approved all 3 projects. So they had a few minor questions, but so we'll go on to the RTM now. I do have on Monday night, the 18th, is the general budget for sewer operating. So I'll be presenting that to the council. Then the following, it's Wednesday, Thursday night is CIP and operating budget for the RTM committees.
Are you
So a lot of
talking,
meetings next week.
Yeah.
were you talking about Ken Comfort and Tim Mason? Who were, according to the last meetings,
Well, that's in Harry's report.
were going to take the exam. Did they pass it?
We're on a different topic.
Yeah, when we get to Harry's report, we can cover that day.
Okay, okay.
Let's see, I think that Hugh, you had sent me those questions. So I think we covered most of them. One of the questions you had is about the ordinance itself being up to date. I've talked to the building official, and I think Harry, we have talked about updating the ordinance because it was done in 1969, last updated in 1985. There's a lot of technical stuff in there that probably doesn't even apply anymore.
Right.
Processes. So, I mean, we are going to start looking at that. To update the ordinance requires, go through, you guys. So we would write it, you guys approve, then it goes to the council, public hearing, RTM, the whole process. It's not just you guys say, yeah, that looks good, and it gets done.
Right.
There's much more involved.
No, I figured that, but I
So it's a
did,
long process, but we are, it is on our radar at some future time to start looking at that because gosh, 25, almost 30 years old since it's been updated. So that's about all I had on my report.
okay, I have a couple of questions. So in terms of our budget, like including the CIP things, how much of our budget is funded by the fees? I guess I had just assumed that it all was funded by
Yeah,
the
it's
fees, the
100%.
CIP and the operation of the treatment facility.
Yeah, it's 100%. Like Richard said, the only time, like when we do a major upgrade that goes to referendum, then the council gets involved and it becomes, on money. That's funds come from the town, so to speak. But for general operating for the CIP projects that we're talking about here, it's all from user fees.
It's all from our user.
Yeah.
Okay.
If there's a bond issue, are the payments made from money that we generate, or are they paid out of town?
They're paid out of that sewer use tax that shows up in your tax bill.
Okay, in other words, they are paid by
By the whole town.
by the whole, okay.
Yeah, that's why everybody gets, people who live up in the north part of town don't even have sewers. So I was like, why am I paying this sewer tax? It shows up as
Well,
a
I
sewer
don't have
tax in our
sewer.
bill.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
not
not the north part of town, I'm the south part of town.
Yeah, well, it shows up in everything because the thought process is that it benefits the whole town. to
Right.
upgrade the sewer.
Well, I understand that, but, okay, but that, isn't that, is the sewer use tax not something that we don't set, that's something set, done by the town?
Correct. Okay. Yeah, that's the finance department takes care of all that.
All right, okay.
Setting that.
I point out there's a wrinkle in that. If it's stuff, part of a regular assessment, that's right, okay, the Navy doesn't have to pay that. If it's a user fee and there's sewers emanating from the Navy does pay. So what you call it depends who pays to some extent.
Yeah, I mean, the user fees covers, the operation of the whole, so day-to-day operation and the minor maintenance and upgrades. These pump stations, kind of, they're smaller, I know it's a lot of money, $1 million, but it's still small enough, we don't really want to bond for something like that.
Right, okay.
Something I want to add with the sewer tax that the whole town pays, we take their septic. They don't pay additional for their septic. All they pump out their tanks and bring it to us. And that's all.
Can I say this again?
Oh, interesting.
So user fees are those who are connected to the system, and they pay the user fee. But those who also are not connected but pay that sewer tax have the benefit of bringing their septic to the plant for no charge. The septic haulers pump out their tanks and we take it. So we're getting the sewage from everyone in the town.
So you at least have to pay the guy to come and get it,
Right,
but it's probably costs us less because he doesn't have to pay someone else.
right.
Anyway,
Hmm.
we won't just dump it in the ocean. Hopefully.
Hopefully. Okay, so maybe I should have asked when the lawyer was here, but I still want to know about this provision for requiring monitoring that's in the ordinance. You need me to find it? Because according to the email we got from, I'm sorry, I'm terrible with the names from the attorney.
Attorney Callahan?
Yeah, it had said, that we didn't have, couldn't, that we need to change the ordinance in order to require that measurements are made. But I think it's this section 15.129 J here. That says, I think this is the right one. Yeah, when required by the commissioner and or director, the owner of any property serviced by a building sewer, yada, yada, shall install a suitable structure and measurements and et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, so we can't force them to do that.
Well, that's what I want clarified is whether, that the email that's in our minutes from 2 meetings ago, or summarized in our minutes from 2 meetings ago, the attorney had told us we couldn't.
We could not, yes, that was my understanding.
But this, when I read this section J, it's all about sampling and measurements.
It seems to me we were there was an undercurrent of if they sit down to a table with us and we get together, we could suggest that they just go ahead and do it.
Right,
And
that's
then that would,
right.
be
And,
that.
and that's specific to that specific case, but
yeah.
No, I would agree.
It sure looks like
Read
that's what it
this,
says.
It says
Yeah,
shall,
I
there's
can't,
no,
you can't get any more clear, it seems,
What, that we can,
than we can require.
yeah.
well, it's not even we don't have to do anything as the board, right? It's,
Right. The
I
director.
assume director means you.
Yeah.
Right?
the commissioner is the commissioner of DEP, so, yeah.
Oh, is that who I didn't know?
Can you require them to split up the outfall from the building so that the cheese and the beer?
Let's
I can't require that, but I can require,
One from the building as a whole.
structure, I mean, I'm reading that, did you see that here?
Mhm.
It's pretty clear to me.
Well,
Okay, we'll come back to that but I think my concern is that our minutes report from the 2 meetings ago, the minutes report that the attorney told us we couldn't do it, but my read of that is.
I mean, I could clarify that with Attorney Callahan, just So we can close that loop since no.
Yeah, and I just like it because the minutes are a public document, and so I'd like, if that, if there's a modification of that opinion that was reported in the minutes previously, if there's a modification, I'd like to see it in the minutes. So that, we have that correct in the public record.
Yeah, this letter we sent them does not mention any such requirement.
Dave, we
But
need
we
to
haven't,
wait.
we haven't sent that.
Have we not
That's
sent
in
this?
draft.
No,
So
and that's
something we can add.
potentially for the executive session, so,
Oh, okay.
okay. Okay, I think that's all I have in terms of the director's report. So we move on to the facility report, and Harry,
Sure.
thank you.
So the plant operated, functioned well in March. There was no extremes of anything, flows, sludges, et cetera. Our nitrogen averaged 145 pounds per day, which is below our permit limit of 153. So far this year, we finished the winter doing well on nitrogen. If you may recall, during the cold season is when it's most difficult to remove nitrogen. So these past few months we did well also. So those two mechanics were scheduled to take their required exams. So the DEP changed their exam structure, so it's not like a single date and everyone in the state goes and takes the exam now. It's more like a driver's test where they schedule it with a testing company and they go and take the test. So when they're eligible, they can go. They can go 4 times a year to take the test now.
Well, they have to take it 4 times a year?
No, they're allowed to.
If you pass it once, you don't
Right,
have.
you just have to pass it once, but if you fail,
It's challenging enough that you might need.
right, I mean, if you fail in
Yeah.
January, you can take it again in March.
Right.
So before the DEP
Sort of like
had
a bars.
Right.
There's
So many certifications, right?
Yeah, it used to
Take
be
your word
that
for that.
the DEP would test twice a year at certain dates, and it was always a struggle for a lot of operators to get all the requirements done in time. So now it's kind of just done on your own pace, where you complete the requirements, you submit to DEP, and then they allow you 4 times over the next 12 months to take the test. So even though that's next month's thunder because he took the test in April, he did pass.
So I'm sorry, both of them took it? Or?
No, only one of them, Tim Mason, took it and he passed his test.
And passed. And Ken is not.
Ken has not taken his test yet.
I see, okay. Okay,
So Goss Cove Pump Station renovation is proceeding. That's in bypass right now, so the portable pumps are set up for that, and the station's completely offline. And I understand they were working almost double shifts to speed up, for them to speed up their work. It's no impact to the town, no extra cost to the town. They just want to get the work done quicker.
So for a long time, they were waiting for parts or something.
Right, they waited.
Now finally shown up.
Right.
Yeah. No.
Gravel Street Pump Station, that renovation is proceeding, still kind of in the beginning parts of the work. There's a few questions that have come up about placement of different equipment that are being resolved. Mumford Cove Pump Station renovation, that design is in progress. And the lab, the WPCF lab renovation is, it's under review. Plans have been submitted for us to review. No work has started on that, no physical work. So that covers that report. There is There was one thing I recall last month's meeting, somebody asked about that annual forum, the wastewater forum. So that actually came in the mail,
Oh.
if you're interested.
Mhm.
And,
Yeah, I saw it. It's different from what it used to be, sort of. seems to me.
I think, well, maybe it's still up at the Aqua Turf Club. That's the one you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still up there.
It used to be very sort of whatever. There's a lot of reports from small, like people that were gathered around some lake and all they had was septic systems and they formalized it and then reported on stuff like that.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, I think they just have discussions on different topics. I know there's always the legislative topic, which is always interesting. So I don't know, if any of you want this
I
information?
have a copy. I don't know if I'm gonna go or not, but as I say, I found it interesting. I think one
So-
more of us could well go.
Is this something that the town is a member of, or it's?
It
just-
is, it's a trade association, wastewater trade association.
It's statewide, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Trade association, and, so the different engineering companies have members in it, treatment plants and have members in it. It's, like I said, it's just like any other trade organization where they, provide newsletters, hold seminars, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And if we want to go, we tell you and you pay the fees. and we
Right.
get to go, yeah.
So, okay, I have mixed feelings about trade associations. But I don't know that I want to go into it now. Who's actually a member? The town? Is somebody paying like dues or something?
Yeah, there's like a small annual dues to pay to be a member.
I mean, are we as the WPCA, is it coming from our funding or from the town?
It comes from our funding, just the sewer funding.
Oh.
Okay. Could we put that on the future agenda for discussion?
Sure.
Never have.
Well, how much money are we talking?
I don't know, I have to get you that.
So my concern isn't the amount of money. My concern is the activities that are occurring. So, this is a water supply issue rather than a sewage issue, but there's I can't remember what it's called now, the water, suppliers association kind of thing. And they were, I think, essentially lobbying around issues of lead levels and how it was being dealt with. And I thought it was really inappropriate. And so that's obviously not directly at all relevant for this group or the sewer, but I just want to sort of make sure what's going on here.
Well, this is about sewage, not about water.
Yeah, absolutely. So the issue that I just raised is not an issue for this group, but anyway. And so was this different than that email that you sent us that was about this legislation? Was that from this group?
Well, it was, they're the ones that kind of shine a light on that for us.
Right.
Because I don't follow legislation.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay. Anything else anybody wants to raise, or we move on?
I have a question which I hesitate to raise because it might be, I'm not sure there's an answer to it. We had this major kerfuffle about the sewage smelling like yeast. And we wanted to get somebody to make good on that for us. Is the fact that this happened, I don't know, how long have they been in business? A couple of years?
Right.
Yeah. Has anybody made a comparison of how these BOD, COD, TSS numbers are now and compared them with what they were before the brewery started up? In other words, we know that they've put bad things in the sewer, but has that bad stuff they put in affected our operation in any way?
Wait, can I interrupt? Can we delay that question until we move to that topic?
I thought we were on it.
No, we're not on it yet.
Okay,
We're on the facility report.
yeah, okay, well,
Okay, thank you. No, it's a fair question. I want that question, we'll discuss that.
okay, whatever.
Okay, so the next item is the chairman's report. So I guess you brought up the ordinance, and so the one thing obviously is, we'll get clarification around that section on monitoring and measurement. I'm just curious, and you can probably answer me quickly, that ordinance requires like the use of asbestos, I can't think of the right term, concrete that,
Asbestos cement pipe.
right, and lead for joining, for joints. And I assume that's all outdated and no longer the way things are done.
Yeah,
Is that
I mean,
true?
there are sewer mains that are asbestos, mystic, a lot of them are, and we still tap into them.
Right.
Yeah, we don't use, everything's PVC now or cast
That's-
iron, there's no lead joints.
No.
So that's what I'm saying, that's why we're really,
Yeah.
through some of those technical specs are really outdated.
Are we being required to remove anything that has lead in it? I mean, we would if this was water, but this is sewer.
So,
Right.
there's no requirement for that.
Okay.
Okay, I just, that's what I figured.
Yeah.
But I guess sort of, anyway, there are a bunch of other things, so that's really, I guess. So I think that's all I want to say. So should we move on to old business? And I assume we need to go into executive session again to discuss the letter.
We did last time, so.
Okay, so then I hereby move that the members, well, let me ask because, I'm sorry, your name is escaped my,
Justina.
Justina, my apologies, I'm terrible. She would leave,
Yeah.
and then I'm just wondering, because we have this new business item, which was this House Bill 128. Do we want to
Want to take that up now?
take that up first and then go into executive session so she doesn't have to
That's fine.
come back? Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
makes sense.
Okay, Harry, you want to summarize what this House Bill 128 or?
Sure. So it is a bill before the state legislature that prevents property being foreclosed upon for sewer delinquency until they reach a certain dollar value. They've reduced it from the originally it was $20,000 delinquency. It's been dropped a couple of times. I understand it is now down to $4,000. But that $4,000 for residential property is still about 10 years worth of non-payment. So it's still, I'm still concerned. I'm not sure what caused someone to bring this up. I mean, all I can think of is it's more related to an industry or something commercial that would have had that sort of a delinquency.
But it doesn't apply to commercial properties. It only applies to owner occupied. That's, at least that's. what
Oh,
I
is
read.
that, like, yeah, I don't do that.
You mean the law?
The
this House Bill
Right.
128.
all of the changes apply to owner occupied. All of everything that's underlined is a change. And if you look at the statement of purpose, it refers specifically to owner occupied real property. So that's all it appears to my, at least I didn't read the entire thing. I read the changes. And I also read the part about how they can assign liens to private people, which I really think is terrible, but that's already in the law. So, and what I don't recall, and I think I did see it in here somewhere, is what the interest rate is on the liens, because there is a lien put on the properties if they don't pay. And like the interest rate for some liens is very high, especially in relation to what you can borrow money for now. I think there's one that's 18%.
Right.
I think this may have been,
This letter we haven't sent yet, it says 18.
right, 18%. That's right. That's what I saw. And so, if it seems to me that if you got a lien on your property that's gathering interest at 18%, you have a powerful incentive to pay it off.
You would think.
I mean, it's just,
So was
Just a little
there,
bit, I have
sorry,
some other
go ahead.
background on this. I mean, this bill, one of the sponsors of this bill is Senator Mark Mooney from New Haven.
I don't
And
know.
apparently, in what I'm gathering from some of his letters I've read, that the Greater New Haven Sewer Authority has been really draconian, I guess is the word used, and they've been foreclosing on properties to collect small debts. If somebody's $300 in debt, they don't put a lien on the property, they go and foreclose on this poor guy's house for something like this. So he put this bill, I think, just to protect some of these homeowners, owner-occupied places for some of these sewer authorities throughout the state, and we're certainly not one of them, that, are really not even playing hardball, but just foreclosing on houses for.
This doesn't sound like it's protecting anybody. It sounds like they're going after.
Well, this is meant to protect that they can't foreclose on somebody
Right.
to collect a
Right.
small debt. They have to let it
I
build
mean,
up.
like
to
you
a certain
said,
amount.
you have to be in delinquency for many years.
$4,000.
Like Harry said, it's complicated.
Yeah,
The amount's been negotiated down from, would you say, 20 down to 4.
But
That was
even
the
that
latest.
would require several years of not payment, right, for an individual homeowner.
Yeah.
But in Groton, we just put liens on people's houses.
Right.
Eventually they pay it. But I can't recall, I can check with the tax collector if we were foreclosed on that because of sewer delinquencies. But
so we as a authority don't get involved in those things are dealt with by the town,
by the tax.
by the tax collector. And,
Yep.
okay. Yeah, I mean, I did go and look at the website about this bill it seems to me it makes sense that the dollar amount should come down because it was like somebody could never pay their sewer bill for 30 years and potentially never build up to that.
Do
level.
people actually do that? Let it run for years and years?
Some do, yeah.
Hmm.
And when they sell the property or whatever, it gets paid eventually.
Right.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, at this point anyway, it's sort of a windfall for the town because they get the interest.
Yeah.
As you know,
Well,
if there's a 17% gap between what you could borrow money for at a bank and what you're paying on a loan.
yeah.
But if you had a big part of your base not paying their bills, that
Right,
could
yeah,
be
that's-
really.
That is true, but
That could
like I say, that's
Right,
what
right.
the interest rate is an
No, I
incentive to do.
understand.
Yeah.
Okay, so was there anything that we needed to do? And the question,
No, I just wanted to inform you
Okay.
as individuals, and it's nothing that the town has to address or you as a commission have to address.
right, it seemed like there were some people who were writing in, and I don't remember now whether it was just individuals or as sewer authorities providing comment to whomever on this bill. But
Doesn't sound
We
like our
don't.
business, sounds like the town's legal department.
Okay, so is that
So just more for information.
great? That's fine, and I appreciate that, so thank you for bringing it up. Okay, so then we're done, and we'll move
Yeah.
on to this
So Justine, you're free to go.
motion for, so
No.
I hereby move that the members of the, good night, that the members of the town of Groton Water Pollution Control Authority, Director of Public Works Greg Hanover, Assistant Director of Public Works Harold Clark, go into executive session pursuant to General Statute Section 1-210B10 and General Statute Section 1-200B6 for 6E for the purpose of reviewing an attorney-client privilege document relating to the high pollutant concentration usage charge. So that's the motion, needs a second.
Second.
So, Justine does need to know that I made the motion, you seconded, and all in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, and we have to, so we're now
Order.
going to executive session, so Greg,
Hold on.
Point
Yep.
of point of
Wait.
order.
Yeah.
In Robert's rules, I don't think the chairman ever makes a motion. He entertains a motion and somebody else makes it.
All right, then I'll make the motion.
And I will second it.
Okay.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you.